What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, we have a signature Barnhill Brothers deep dive coming your way today. We did Connor versus Max just a few days ago. That video's out, and now we are moving right along. The co-main event, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on the surging Benoit Saint-Denis. We are going to break this down, as we always do, from a striking, grappling, and finish up on the intangibles and really dissect every aspect of this fight. What could happen, what we think the advantage for each guy may be, and so on and so forth. Everything in the timestamps below if there's a particular segment you're interested in. But as always, we start with striking. This is going to be a fun one to break down from striking and grappling.
For
you know,
sure.
we have those fights where it's like, oh man, this is going to be a good one to break down, but it's so striking heavy, or
Right.
the opposite, so grappling heavy. I feel like this one is so balanced between the striking, the grappling, and the intangibles. Let's get going with the striking here. The biggest thing to me, and I kind of want to see if you are in agreement or disagreement, we have what will likely be an open stance fight for the majority of it.
Sure.
So Benoit Saint-Denis coming out in the southpaw, Paddy mostly orthodox, but does switch from time to time. And we're looking at two guys who, if we're being realistic, absorb almost an identical amount of strikes per minute, land an almost identical amount of strikes per minute. Maybe you could make an argument that BSD's striking is a little bit cleaner, especially since he switched camps to Nicholas Ott just after the Moicano loss, and he's
Right.
looked damn near flawless since then. But to me, on the feet, this is a really intriguing matchup, and I see places where both guys can really exploit the other. What are your thoughts?
I really love this match, and I'm thinking that this is going to be fight of the night on 329. Now, obviously, the main event could come up and one up these guys because Connor and Max never have boring fights. But BSD and Paddy are definitely going in there to just throw down. And look, Paddy, he's maybe not as durable as he once was. The Justin Gaethje fight is part of the reason. BSD coming through the ranks was super durable. He suffered that knockout. So I think the durability has diminished kind of evenly as well. Like you said about the striking numbers, they're all sort of similar. I think both guys are going to be doing the exact same thing they've always done, which is coming out, trying to get pressure forward, get in their opponent's face, and bring the fight to them. But it's going to be interesting to see who's actually more durable because both guys land big shots. So Paddy the Baddy, he's not the fastest striker in the world. He's kind of slow, actually. And he does find his targets, but often it's very telegraphed. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with throwing telegraph shots as long as they're landing, but Paddy does sort of show you what he wants to throw and then he throws it. But what I think is good about Paddy as far as what he does on the feet is he's able to mix up his shot selection really well. And what I mean by that is he's not just a headhunter. Like, of course, he wants to do damage and try to knock his opponents out, but he's also willing to go to the body. He's also kicking the legs a pretty good bit. And he's got a wide variety, right? He loves to throw knees to the body. He loves to throw kicks to the leg. He's really good at throwing his heavy hands. But it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the pressure of BSD because when Benoit comes across the cage, he puts, caution to the wind and he's just coming after you and trying to land shots. There are opportunities where Paddy's going to be able to sneak his shots in, even if they are slower and more telegraphed, in on BSD as he's, getting square with his opponent and trying to track him down against the cage. So I think that BSD needs to watch out for the uppercuts of Paddy the Baddy. If he was able to land some flush uppercuts on Justin Gaethje, sort of doing the same thing that BSD does, which is pressure forward, trap you against the cage, you tend to get a little bit square there. I think that BSD could wind up getting rocked by some of those shots, but Paddy also stands straight up. There's no head movement, and it drives me crazy, right? His head is always on the center line, and he's a big, tall figure for 155, so his head is there to be hit, and BSD is a headhunter. Obviously, we see him mix it up to the body well. He does a really good job at putting that to the body in the open stance situation. It's always going to be there, especially if you feint high and then go low. You can almost always touch the torso of your opponent in the open stance. So BSD needs to be a little bit cautious when he does bring his pressure. And I do predict for you that BSD will be the one trying to bring the pressure. What we've seen out of Paddy is he usually wins fights when he's the pressure forward fighter, but he also knows when to find his spots and his moments in rounds to bring pressure. And he's been pretty good at showing us like his ability to evade big shots and sort of use the octagon and all this free space that he has. So BSD will likely come out as the pressure guy, and it'll force Paddy to be a little bit more of a counter striker. I don't love that because it didn't work all that well against Justin Gaethje. Now, Paddy's as tough as an old leather boot, so he was able to find his shots, and he ended up having a really good interim title fight with Justin Gaethje. But his best moments in that fight were when he was pressuring forward and sending more than one single shot, but combinations. And then as soon as the combination ended, instead of letting everything reset, letting Justin reset, getting right back on it, throwing more strikes. That's actually something that BSD does really well. BSD will throw his big strikes as soon as they land a 3 or 4 punch combination. Before the reset happens, he's back right on it again, going for another combination. And this one is not an easy fight to predict. It's very interesting how both men approach fights. And I will say that BSD's change in camp and his game plan ability has actually increased, and he's now a little bit more difficult to deal with because he knows exactly how to win fights and where to take his opponents to drown them. And if you boil this fight down, I think it's going to be a war. I think it has the potential to be fight of the night. And I think that the grappling aspect, which we're going to get into, isn't going to be as on display as we see from a BSD usually, or as we have seen even from a Paddy the Baddy. I think both guys have good grappling and are going to be able to negate each other's grappling to a level. And while we may see some ground and pound, we may see some scrambles, for the most part, I think this fight's going to take place on the feet. And I can't wait to see how it goes down, because both of them have a lot of power. Neither of them have great defense, but it does make for an entertaining fight.
Yeah, so a couple of things with the striking. I've really liked the way that BSD has looked since switching camps.
Yeah.
I think Nasruddin Imavov is one of the most elite strikers at 185. Yeah. Obviously, they're running an extremely well-run camp there with Nicholas Ott.
Sure.
BSD and Nasruddin being the two primo athletes in that stable. So they're both getting a lot of attention. I like that he's kind of changed his approach to the fighting. He's settling in a little bit. He's looking a little bit cleaner. He would have the tendency, because he was winning that Dustin Poirier fight pretty well. And Dustin said, I got my butt kicked in the first round, and then I came back in round number 2. And, obviously you saw what happened. So, BSD is learning to take his time. He's learning to not be so headhunty and just ready to get the fight over with right this minute, because you end up paying for that when you get in there against elite level competition.
Sure.
If you're, okay, I've got my opponent hurt, but my opponent's also very seasoned, very, very durable. They've got good counters. They're sneaky. They're a veteran, et cetera, especially like Dustin Poirier, like Renato Moicano, the two people that he lost to back in 2024. I think he let the fight get a little bit away from him to some degree. And I haven't seen that in his last 4 fights since the camp switch. So I'm really happy to see that. I do think that he's cleaned up the loopiness of his strikes. 2 things I didn't love about BSD's striking: he had a lot of power and he did have the ability to finish people, but he would be very loopy. Mm-hmm. So his hooks would be very loopy, his uppercuts, things like that, almost kind of what Paddy does as well.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that he would get really square with his opponent, almost to the point where his shoulders are just at a perpendicular angle to the cage.
Right.
And I didn't love that. So I'm seeing those things kind of get cleaned up. Going back and watching the Roofy fight in preparation for this video, there were a few times that he chased a little bit, trying to get Mauricio to the ground. Now, obviously, he knew he had the ground advantage there, so maybe some of the chasing was for that reason, but he's got to be careful chasing Paddy down, because Paddy, as you said, his stuff is a bit telegraphed, but somehow it's like a DDP. We're going to break him down, just in a week's time. He's the next main event. Some of his stuff is a little telegraphed, a little wild, a little, just erratic, but he seems to land and he seems to knock people out. And Paddy doesn't have that kind of power or that kind of knockout ability, but he does have the ability to change the fight with 1 or 2 shots.
Sure.
And I'm going to save this part of the conversation for intangibles, but just to kind of, preview it a little bit, Paddy tends to have a better chin. BSD has been knocked out before. Paddy has not.
Right.
And so Paddy, we've seen Paddy in some wars, and he's taken some serious damage in his career. So that's going to be a factor. I think Benoit Saint-Denis cannot afford to take as many shots as Paddy can afford to take at this stage of his career.
Right.
Just because Paddy's one of those guys that seems to be an anomaly, and he just kind of has a granite chin.
Scousers can't get knocked out.
Apparently not. And until further notice, I mean, Paddy saying that seems ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous, but he's proven to us, even, eating some bombs from Justin Gaethje, who we just saw finish Ilia Topuria on the White House lawn, shows that he's got a really very high level of durability, especially with his chin. So I want to give the striking advantage before I hand it back off to you to Benoit Saint-Denis.
Okay.
I think that with this camp change, he's cleaner, he's tighter, he has a better shot selection, and I think Paddy gets a little too chin high and a little too hands low at times, and he's a little bit easier to find. And the quickest distance between any 2 points is a straight line.
Right.
And I think Benoit's striking has been cleaned up to where it's more economical in the sense that it's out and back, and it's not looping, it's not telegraphed.
It's not throwing his balance off and everything like that.
Exactly, where Paddy's is still a little bit like that, as we saw in the Justin Gaethje fight, which was the last time we saw Paddy. So I want to carve out a little asterisk to say that I do think that the striking advantage is BSD's, but that said, BSD cannot afford to take the type of damage that Paddy can afford to take if he wants to win this fight.
Yeah, I may be crazy for saying this, but I think Justin Gaethje was the perfect warm-up fight for BSD.
If you want to call it that.
For Paddy, because stylistically, we see BSD do some of the similar things that we saw Justin Gaethje do. He loves to try to get inside. I think he might have even learned that collar tie from Justin Gaethje, and we've seen him go out there and really push the pace and try to get in somebody's face. He gets square. Justin Gaethje gets square at times. And Paddy the Baddy, of course, he lost that fight, but he did learn in the fight how to deal with it. And we saw the first rounds be less competitive than the later rounds, which means Paddy was improving as the fight was going on. Now, of course, Justin was able to rev it up and change his game plan a little bit, change his tactics, and still get the win. But I think that Paddy the Baddy actually is going to be pretty well conditioned for how to deal with a guy like BSD, who loves to bring the pressure, loves to get into that dirty boxing range. Like you said, he's cleaned up his boxing, and it is more straight to the point. And, he's better with his shots. He's not coming off his balance too much. He's not compromising his base. But that does still happen at times when you fight that gung-ho and without as much caution. So I'm interested to see how Paddy deals with it. The thing that does scare me a little bit about Paddy, and it should segue well into the grappling, is BSD has power. Justin Gaethje had power, and I don't know how many times he knocked Paddy to the ground, but it was several times. I think it was like 2 in the first round where he actually dropped Paddy. And I don't know if they were like, he got a concussion and fell to the ground, or if he just got hit and needed to collect his thoughts for a second on the ground and thought maybe it'd be better and hopefully Justin would come down into the guard or something like that. But BSD does have the ability to control this fight with its power on the feet and then take it to the ground, because if Justin Gaethje's able to get to that, north-south type position, or if he's able to get to, a collar tie or a snap down position, he could end up finding his way to the back, which is not something that Justin Gaethje was doing with Paddy. He was just staying over in that snap down position and looking for his ground and pound.
Proved to be a really good move for Justin too. He used that against Ilia as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Most people think, and even fighters train this way, if somebody does snap you down and you weren't able to, prevent that, now you're on all fours, the next likely position that they're going to go for is to spin around through one side or the other, get to your back, and then start to either put a hook in or do some ground and pound to flatten you out, something like that. And Justin Gaethje doesn't do any of that. He just likes to sit right there and find his openings from that position. So I think BSD, being a more jiu-jitsu heavy grappler, because he loves to obviously wrestle, but he does like to go for submissions. So once he does get Paddy rocked with a shot, he could look to snap him down a little bit if Paddy does decide to shoot or something, and then he would look to transition. But I would almost say it's better to do what Justin did than to try to go to a traditional jiu-jitsu style fight with Paddy on the ground, because Paddy is a very good jiu-jitsu grappler. He's not good at getting takedowns. He's not good at getting his opponents to the ground. but he is very good in the jiu-jitsu, positions that are available for him on the ground. So I'm interested to see how the power of BSD early can dictate where this fight takes place, because I think the best chances for BSD to win would come in the next segment for us, which is the grappling. I think he would have a better chance at getting to a dominant position and looking for ground and pound. There's a better chance he wins the fight if he does that than if he were to either just stand with Paddy for 15 minutes or if he were to go submission hunting once he has Paddy to the ground.
So, okay, so I think that's a good segue, but I still need your advantage. Who's got the striking advantage, Paddy or Benoit? It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one, and it really could go either way. I think these guys are like, 49, 51%. It could truly go either way, but I'm going to give the striking advantage slightly to BSD.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The little bit cleaner, a little bit more tightened up lately.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right call.
Yeah.
So let's move into grappling.
Okay.
There's a big, and I know the statistics don't tell the whole story, right? We go back and we watch fights, and then we also look at stats.
Right.
And then we kind of try to make sense of them. But there's one glaring statistic that sticks out to me that is problematic if you're a Paddy Pimblett fan or hoping that Paddy Pimblett wins this fight.
Okay.
Paddy averages less than 1 takedown per fight.
Yeah.
Benoit Saint-Denis averages almost 5.
Wow.
Paddy has a 44% takedown defense. Benoit has like a 70. So we're dealing with a scenario where if you're just looking on paper, strip the names out, everything, guy A in Benoit Saint-Denis is going to get guy B down almost at his will.
Yeah.
Now, is Paddy good from bottom position? Absolutely.
Very good.
He choked King Green out with a nice triangle
Yeah.
from the bottom position. So is he going to do that to Benoit Saint-Denis? That's unlikely. Benoit's got really good top pressure. He knows how to hold good position. I don't really see him getting caught up in a triangle or a butterfly sweep from bottom or something like that where Paddy's able to reverse position. So if Benoit Saint-Denis can manage to get Paddy down, and remember, we're going to be in an open stance position, so look for the single leg. There's going to be single leg opportunities for Benoit, which he's got some pretty good wrestling that he can chain together. He also has really nice body lock takedowns and stuff like that. We could see a real problem for Paddy if he's taken down time and time again and can't get back up, because we know that Benoit holds good top position. Paddy's comfortable in bottom position, but that's only because he's had success submitting people from bottom. What happens if you're just getting beaten up from bottom?
Right.
Where Benoit's on top of you and he's raining down punches, he's raining down elbows. He's got a good head and arm triangle. He had one of those recently in his last couple of fights.
Yeah.
So that is the problem for me, is you have way higher takedown ratio for Benoit, way higher submission per 15-minute average for Benoit. And again, I know the stats don't tell the whole story, but I feel like those numbers are kind of painting a picture here that might be problematic for Pimblett.
Yeah, the ground is where this fight gets really interesting. Paddy the Baddy has great submissions on the ground. BSD is really good at controlling his opponents on the ground. So it really does depend on who gets the dominant position at the start of the grappling exchange. And I think the BSD is probably going to wind up dropping Paddy, because we saw Justin Gaethje land some good shots that dropped Paddy several times in their fight. So I could see a situation where BSD winds up in the exact same positions that Justin Gaethje was in. But it does get very interesting because, like I said, Justin Gaethje likes to stay in that snap down position, whereas BSD would likely transition to the back and look for something. Now, if he gets to the back and we've got Paddy on all fours, there's really, you have a couple different ways to get back up to your feet, right? If they've got your weight in your hands, right? So now you're holding yourself up with majority of your hands. You can Granby roll out, but that's hard to do against a guy who knows how to follow you and keep chest on back and scramble along with you. Think about Hamzat Chimaev whenever he was chasing Kevin Holland. Just knew how to keep a hold of him even through the Granby rolls. So if BSD can get to that position, I think he can have some success with ground and pound rather than just looking for a submission, trying to get your hooks in. That's where openings tend to happen. People get too high up on the back when they go to put their hooks in. And then a guy like Paddy, who knows how to defend, dominant positions, defend submissions, can likely find a way out in a scramble, especially as the fight goes on. But if he's able to, if Paddy's able to get Benoit Saint-Denis, let's just say that he does drop Paddy, get him to the ground, and then he goes to the back. Then you kind of have to play with two different aspects. Whether you're going to try to stand up, and that's if somebody's got their weight on more on your hips and they're kind of making you sit down on your heels. That's where BSD might find himself in this fight. And if that's the case, Paddy has to start to look to stand up. And that's actually not the hardest thing to do, right? You sort of rock your weight forward and you put one foot on the ground and build your base back up, especially if you're against the cage. But if that happens, then you see a lot of grapplers take their opponent and put the weight into their hands to sort of off balance them again. And that's when the timing for the Granby rolls will be there for Paddy. You have to act like you're building up base, so they push forward, and now you're utilizing their momentum to roll out and then hopefully create enough of a scramble to get back to your feet. I think that Paddy will be able to get back up to his feet. And the grappling aspect of this fight and just Benoit Saint-Denis' ability to chain the striking into the grappling, but doing it in a way that does not lend to having gas later in the fight. You know, Benoit Saint-Denis does not leave any gas in the tank. By the time 15 minutes is over, he is out of gas because he knows just how hard he needs to push the pace. And even we've seen later rounds for BSD get a little bit shaky because he kind of goes so hard in the beginning of the fights trying to get fights done with. So I could see BSD getting exhausted from his own offensive grappling. And like I said, if he doesn't just look for ground and pound positions and avoid trying to just submission hunt and all those isometric holds that you have to do to keep a guy of Paddy the Baddy's skill and size on the ground, will exhaust you. And one thing we know about Paddy the Baddy, yes, he gets dropped. Yes, he doesn't have great head movement. Yes, he's susceptible to being cracked, but he's got a chin. He's very durable, and he's dog tough because regardless of how bad you hurt him in a fight, he doesn't go anywhere. So I think that Benoit Saint-Denis really does need to utilize in this grappling realm the ability to conserve energy. Because if he doesn't conserve his energy, he's going to wind up exhausted with arms that are full of blood and gassed out. His legs are likely going to get tired as well. And Paddy the Baddy, even though he's not the fastest guy, he's not the most dynamic, that actually serves better for him later in the fight because if you're a guy who utilizes agility and explosive movement exclusively to get your offense going, being exhausted takes away your best weapons. But Paddy doesn't really utilize that kind of stuff. He's sort of a counter striker that puts heavy hands on you, a counter striker that likes to, find his moments and trade with you. So I don't think that Paddy would be as out of sorts once exhausted as BSD would be if BSD does go out there and blow all of his gas early in this fight.
Yeah, very, very solid points there. And I think the grappling in this, like I said, on the ground, I give it about even. They can both submit.
Sure.
They can both sweep. They can both do ground and pound. They're both very lethal and dangerous, and you have to respect both of these men on the ground.
Yeah.
But I do like The bottom line is if you're on top, you're winning the fight on the ground, unless you're getting submitted like Bobby Green did against Paddy. But I don't see that happening. So I do see Benoit winning the moments when the fight is on the ground because I do think he will be in top position doing ground and pound and doing submission hunting.
Yeah, we don't see BSD's back on the canvas very often, do we?
Not often. And so the other thing that you mentioned was BSD likes to empty the tank. Since he made the switch to the new camp, he's not been out of the second round. Now, that's because he's won all of the fights by first or second round finish.
Right.
And I think if memory serves, it's 2 knockouts, 2 subs.
There you go.
One of the knockouts was like 16 seconds against Beneil Dariush.
Yeah.
So he's really he's evolved into an early finisher.
Right.
Which is fantastic. You don't get paid by the hour in the sport. The problem is he's fighting a Scouser that doesn't get knocked out. So I do think that the gas tank is going to come into play here. I do think this is going to go more than the second round, unless one of these guys clips the other one. But before we move into intangibles, because that's a perfect move into the intangibles discussion, because I think that's one of them, is gas tank. Who are you giving the grappling advantage to? I'm giving it to Benoit simply because he can land a significantly higher takedown per fight ratio.
Yeah.
He's got a higher finish rate. He's got 2 submissions in his last, 4 fights. So I'm leaning towards Benoit having the grappling advantage ever so slightly here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Benoit has the grappling advantage only slightly, but it's because he has the ability to take the fight to the ground where Paddy doesn't really have that same ability. And he also is very good with ground and pound. I would not suggest for Benoit Saint-Denis to win this fight to go submission hunting on Paddy, because he's very good in the jiu-jitsu submission grappling aspect of fighting. But I do find it very interesting that the Benoit Saint-Denis' top position, he's very good at maintaining it, and he's really good at finding his openings to either land big elbows like he did against Dan Hooker. I can't remember exactly the position he was in, but it was either mount or modified crucifix or something like that, where he just had Dan Hooker dead to rights and was able to just land big elbows, big ground and pound strikes. That would have to be what I would assume they're training for, not looking to just go submit Paddy the Baddy. Now, sometimes ego gets in the way and fighters want to beat somebody at what they're best at. So maybe he will try to do that. But I'm interested to see what Benoit Saint-Denis comes out, because we know he's a fast starter. He comes out strong. He lands big shots. He throws live rounds from the very beginning, and that'll get a guy like Paddy to move backwards, which could put Paddy's back up against the cage, open up opportunities for Benoit to get his takedowns against the cage, which in my opinion is actually easier to do than out in the open of the octagon. So I'm interested in seeing how that aspect of grappling is initiated from BSD. But I also worry a little bit because BSD has modified his game, right? He's a different fighter than when he fought Dustin Poirier. But sometimes having success on the feet can make you revert back to old ways. And he was having a lot of success on the feet against Dustin Poirier until he got knocked out, right? And I have a feeling he's going to have a lot of success against Paddy on the feet, which could get him to be a little bit less cautious. It could have him square up a little bit more. And like we were saying earlier, Paddy has a lot of power in his hands. He knows how to throw counter strikes. He knows how to time somebody when they're hitting him, and he's durable enough to stay in the pocket and have his wherewithal to understand when to throw his big shots and when to defend. So I think that BSD, if he comes out and has success on the feet, it could end up being a blessing and a curse, because if he doesn't use that success to then get Paddy to the ground, I think Paddy will find openings. And I just worry that BSD may end up having the same success that he had against Dustin Poirier on the feet, which opens him up to being hit and cracked a bit more, and Paddy would actually be able to take advantage of that. So I'm going to give the grappling advantage ever so slightly to BSD because of his ability to offensively wrestle against Paddy's offensive wrestling and defensive wrestling. But I think when it comes down to jiu-jitsu, submission defense, it's pretty much even.
Yeah. And so now moving into intangibles, and so we both gave striking and grappling to Benoit Saint-Denis. Like if you're watching this video, you're probably starting to think this is a pretty Benoit Saint-Denis favorable video, but not so fast, right? Because and guys, we make our final predictions the week of the fight, so make sure you come back and we do a full main card deep dive predictions, and that comes out midweek on fight week. So that is where you'll hear our final predictions on this fight. But here is why I'm still undecided on this fight, because I've already laid out for the last, 27 minutes, why, I think that Benoit Saint-Denis has a advantage in almost every aspect of this fight over Paddy Pimblett. It'd be easy for me just to say I'm picking Benoit Saint-Denis, and I may very well do that. But here is what's given me pause. We've seen Benoit Saint-Denis knocked out before. We've seen him rocked. We've never seen Paddy knocked out.
Right.
And Paddy doesn't get the credit he deserves for the type of power he has. Is he the same boxer that Dustin Poirier is? No, he's not. Is he going to find those clean shots like Dustin found? Probably not. But Paddy did land on Justin Gaethje. He had more success across, all aspects of judgment against Justin Gaethje than Ilia Topuria did.
That's right.
And he landed massive shots. He wobbled Justin at times. Benoit Saint-Denis has not proven that he has the chin that Paddy has.
Right.
That's what is the coin toss here. That's the biggest X factor in this fight. That's why far and away I give the intangibles advantage to Paddy Pimblett, because I feel like Paddy needs to put together 2 or 3 really well-timed and really powerful combinations, and he can turn the whole tide on this fight. Is he going to starch BSD like Dustin did, where, he catches him with a good combo and finishes up on the ground? Maybe not. But if he can compromise BSD, he can work towards that late finish. And while we've said everything good about BSD's switch to Nicholas Ott for his training camp, we haven't seen him out of the second round since making that switch.
Right.
And if BSD gets rocked in the first and second round, how's he going to look coming out in the final round? What's it going to be like, if BSD has to go past that 10-minute mark with somebody who's as game as Paddy Pimblett? I don't know. All of those reasons are the reasons I'm giving the advantage in intangibles to Paddy. And the only, I guess, exception you could make is when you talk about who's got the motion, right? And that's BSD's now on a 4-fight win streak, all finishes. Paddy the Baddy's on a 1-fight losing streak. But he came into the UFC and racked up 7 wins.
Right.
And
that was an interim world title fight against the now champion of the world.
The now undisputed, and Justin Gaethje, and he made it all 25 minutes.
Right.
So, I don't think you can say Paddy's lost his motion. He's still there. He's not on a 4-fight winning streak. He's on, unfortunately, a 1-fight skid. But you have to consider the level of competition. And when you look at Hooker, Dariush, and Rufi, Dariush is on his way out. Sure. As much as I love Beneil. Dan Hooker is a good fighter, but he's not a great fighter.
Right.
And he's a striker. It was a great stylistic matchup for Benoit Saint-Denis. And, Rufi is the only one that's like really making some serious waves right now of the last 3 opponents that Benoit has defeated.
But that has to do a lot with style, right? Because Rufi has not a whole lot of grappling. And even like a Michael Chandler, who is a wrestler to the core, had no chance against him because he doesn't have the complete mixed martial arts set to get the fight to the ground.
Exactly. And Paddy's a totally different fight. Right. So for all those reasons, I am giving the intangibles advantage to Paddy Pimblett for sure.
Okay, so yeah, I think Paddy the Baddy is actually going to approach this fight a lot differently than Dan Hooker did, than Mauricio Rufi did, because those guys were afraid of BSD taking them down, as they should have been. Paddy's not really afraid of that, because I do think that Paddy believes in his grappling skills. He knows that he can scramble with just about anybody in the division. He knows that he can avoid getting submitted. And I'm interested to see how BSD approaches getting Paddy to the ground, because fear is the number one thing to get somebody to the ground, right? If somebody's afraid that you're going to take them down, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get taken down because they're so worried about everything. They're now hyperactive on any little feint that you show, any little level change. You can look at their eyes and they're going to pull their leg back or try to start sprawling.
It's like if you're in a conversation with somebody and it's like an important conversation and you're like, man, I really hope I don't say something stupid in this conversation. And in your brain the whole time you're like, don't say something stupid. Don't say something stupid. Right. Don't say something stupid. Guess what you're going to say?
The stupid thing.
The stupidest thing imaginable. So,
100%.
That's kind of the same thing with the takedowns.
Yeah.
When you can fight without concern of being taken down like Paddy can, he can fight a little bit more loose.
Yeah, and I don't think he's as worried about BSD's offensive grappling as some of those other opponents were. And look, BSD has, I would venture to say their strength of schedule is pretty similar, because Paddy had the fight with Justin Gaethje, so that's the highest level that the division has to offer. And other than that, he had like his Jared Gordon fight, Bobby Green, he's a great character in the sport, but he's not overly impressive.
Past his prime Tony Ferguson.
That went to decision, I think, right? So obviously, as of late, he has the one big fight that's bigger than any of the fights that BSD has. But BSD,
he lost that one.
Yeah. But BSD also has, pure strikers. A lot of the people that he's recently fought are basically pure strikers. So it's hard to really say. I would say the strength of schedule is pretty even. And when it comes to intangibles, the thing that sticks out to me, Paddy the Baddy is very good at landing an uppercut. So I know I'm going to get technical as far as my intangible is concerned, but
we like a technical intangible.
Yeah. So BSD, as we know, he loves to get his hands going to set up the takedowns, especially up against the cage. But what he does is he gets really square and then he shoots in, and you can kind of see when he's going to do it, right? You can see it on his face when he's going to throw a hook and then he's going to change levels and go. And what we've noticed from Paddy the Baddy is he was really good at finding an uppercut on Justin Gaethje. And I think the entries that BSD is going to show are going to be similar to some of the entries that we saw from Justin Gaethje. Remember, Justin is not much of a wrestler in his MMA fights. He's obviously a decorated wrestler that doesn't like to use it, but he was looking for those opportunities against Paddy. And whenever Paddy figured it out, he started to land both uppercuts and hooks on Justin as he would come in. I think those same exact shots will be available to him when he fights BSD, because BSD does sort of, put his hands down and look to grab your leg. I mean, you have to, right? If you're going to change levels and grab somebody's legs, technically your hands can't also be on your face protecting yourself.
Right.
So you have to sort of risk it a little bit. And Paddy, like I said, he's durable enough to stay in the pocket. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand, especially if you don't train and haven't trained for years, is the only way to get durable, the only way to get experience through dealing with a bunch of offense coming your way, especially strikes, is you have to get hit a lot. So Paddy obviously is fine with seeing shots come his way, some of them bouncing off his head, some of them going to his body, but he's also able to still see his shots and let them go. And yes, he does, throw a little bit slower than a lot of the guys that we've seen BSD have success on the feet against, but he throws with serious power. And if BSD changes levels and runs right into one of those uppercuts, that could change the fight dramatically, because BSD changing levels, coming in with all that momentum and pressure, running into an uppercut or running into a hook could be enough to do a lot of damage and cause him to actually pull back a little bit and be a little bit more telegraphed when he decides he does want to change levels and close distance and get inside. So I'm really interested to see how Paddy is able to deal with the flurries up against the cage that BSD is going to throw, because we know he's going to do that. And we know that Paddy, even though he likes to be a pressure forward fighter, also knows when to, use the perimeter of the cage, stick to the outside, try to create distance. And he waits for his shots. He's also got a beautiful knee. So a couple things, I guess we can sort of lump this intangible into shots up the middle for Paddy, right? It's the uppercut or the knee. We've seen him land some pretty good knees.
On the time takedown entry.
Yeah, on the time takedown entry. And we saw Rufy. Now, he's a totally different style striker than Paddy, but he landed a knee to the face of BSD, and it was sort of because of that sort of situation, right? BSD coming forward, lead leg heavy, leaning down towards the legs, looking in that direction. And Paddy doesn't throw a jump knee like Rufy did, but he does, stand there, plant his foot that's on the ground and throw a more of a Muay Thai style knee. So he could be looking for BSD to close that distance, change the level, and then find something up the middle, whether it's the Derek Lewis style knockout of Curtis Blades coming from an uppercut, or if he's just going to stand there and wait for it. And obviously, it's a little bit risky when you stand and throw a Muay Thai knee right up the middle, because you could wind up getting run through and taken to the ground. But if you're not afraid of the takedowns or what happens once BSD gets you to the ground, you can really throw that with 100% power and really start to disrupt his ability to close distance that way. So I'm going to give the intangibles to Paddy. And I guess I'm sort of lumping everything in BSD's favor, aside from a couple of random things and technical things that could go Paddy's way. But I definitely think this is the most competitive fight on the 329 card, and I can't wait to see how it shakes out, because both guys are positioning themselves to be very, very meaningful contenders in the division that need some answers but aren't going to get any until next year. This could lay the foundation for a title run for either Paddy or BSD come 2027.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to sum it up, right? We laid out a framework for BSD, and on paper BSD should run through Paddy, but unfortunately for Benoit, fights don't happen on paper. They happen in the cage, and Paddy tends to thrive in the chaos.
Yes.
And that's going to be the biggest X factor here. And I think that's going to come down to my final pick ultimately is going to be, who do I think Benoit can handle the chaotic nature of Paddy Pimblett long enough to do what he needs to do and it can do technically to win the fight. That's what it will, that is what my decision will boil down to, and I have not made it yet.
Can I throw one more intangible at you?
Yeah, please do.
I think that Paddy the Baddy is actually a better feinter than he gets credit for. He showed Justin Gaethje some pretty good feints and had Justin biting on a lot of them. Now, he also throws a lot of live rounds, so you don't know what is going to be a feint and what's going to be an actual shot he's looking to hit you with. But as the fight progresses, I think his ability to feint and get BSD to react to it is going to end up benefiting Paddy Paddy. And even though he's not the cleanest striker in the world, he does have the ability to put his hands on his targets. So I think that some good feints early on from Paddy could end up finding some bigger openings later in the fight, whether that be body kicks and I know he's going to be kicking to the left side because it's an open stance. So that spleen side, of course, it can do a lot of damage if you burst somebody's spleen, but it doesn't shut them down like a liver kick does. So I think that this is going to be really interesting. I think Paddy does need to focus on attacking the head, attacking the body, and attacking the legs. And if BSD comes out there looking to headhunt like we've seen him do in the past, he could wind up dismantling BSD from top to bottom, dealing with a less dangerous BSD as the fight goes on. This may be a crazy thing to say, but I have a feeling this fight's going to end in finish.
There we go. Well, guys, make sure you come back midweek on Fight Week to see who we are picking in all of the fights on the main card, including this one. And if you haven't already, we'll put a link to it in the description below, the Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway deep dive that we did just a couple of days ago.
It's a banger, so go watch it.
It's been performing really well. You guys have received it really well, and we're very appreciative of that. If you feel like Nick and I have earned it today, please hit that subscribe button. It's one free thing that you can do that helps us out tremendously and helps us grow this channel. So we thank you in advance for that. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Peace.